Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on volume 4 of Heaven Official's Blessing. Oh my gosh! Oh, so guess where we left off last week? On a dang cliffhanger again, because we are at volume 4, aka the tease and the cliffhanger. We are being teased with Hua Cheng and Xie Lian's flirting. We are being teased with the black water. We are being teased by this possible CPR moment that Xie Lian's about to have with Hua Cheng. And it just leaves us on a cliffhanger every single damn time. But you know what? At this point, I've just come to expect it. At this point, I have come to accept it. So I'm actually recording ahead for this week's reaction as well as next week's reaction, because I'm about to leave for 10 days away from my computer, which means I will be gone for 10 days without reacting to anything, which is the most I've ever been gone on this channel without doing so. So, and it's 2 years of being here, so I'm trying to get caught up and get everything set up while I'm gone. So the good news is that I will be able to get to do a little binge reading this week, which is exciting. The bad news is then I have nothing. So if next week's chapter's in on a major cliffhanger, I am screwed until I get back, and it's gonna be the worst 10 days ever, right? So I do actually have some comments for this video that I want to go over, but I will likely not have any comments for next week's video, and then I'll have all the comments coming back. So that's what we have to look forward to. But we are on chapters 120 and 121, and we left off with Hua Cheng seemingly like he was unconscious, and Xie Lian being like, well, I guess I need to perform CPR and breathe into Hua Cheng through a kiss. And as he's leaned down to kiss Hua Cheng, his eyes have opened up. So is Hua Cheng going to stop Xie Lian before he kisses him? Probably not. I wouldn't, but we'll see what happens, right? Because Hua Cheng knows at the end of the day that Xie Lian was not trying to do something without consent. He literally was doing it because he was going to save him. So, but is Xie Lian going to know that Hua Cheng watched him kiss him? That's the big question. He will be mortified if that happens. But we have a couple of comments before we start this volume, but I am so freaking excited. So, Luna talked about how the Russian author, I guess I said a few weeks ago that there was the gif of the kissing where it was like we altered the content of some of the international versions to be like, instead of Xie Lian and Hua Cheng kissing, as you see on the cover here for the English version, they're just barely apart, gazing longingly into each other's eyes. Luna says that apparently that did not make it past the Russian censors anyway, and so they're redoing the entire cover, which is sad because hello 2023, but also I'm a little excited by it. I'm gonna take it as a silver lining in that, here's the thing, the internet exists, y'all. People in these countries that don't get access to this cover, that still read the story, they're gonna get this picture. They're gonna get access to it. So what are you even doing, publishing companies? If it's international, if it's somewhere in the world, people have access to it. So, but I'm going to view it as a silver lining in that we get to have another amazing piece of artwork that is going to be the cover of this. So I'm going to treat it as, try to make the most positive spin we can on it and say, you know what, at least we get another piece of Hua Lian art out of it, and I'm going to take that as a bonus. So I am excited to see what the volume 4 cover is. Should be exciting. My copy of volume 6 is coming in the mail. I have not seen the cover, and so I'm not wanting to be spoiled. I'm hopefully going to open it up in a reaction on this channel and show you all my thoughts about it, but I'm really excited. So thank you, Luna, for explaining that for us. SQQLBH314 talked about how I did have a correction. I said a few reactions ago that that Pei Ming was wanting Pei Jr. to replace Yijin. And SQQLBH314 said, well, that was actually a rumor spread by Qirong back during the Goshi days with Xie Lian. And I was like, oh yes, when Lan Chanshu and all that was going on. So I stand corrected. Thank you, SQQLBH314, for explaining that Qirong did spread that rumor. It's not necessarily true. I was like, okay, that makes a lot more sense of why Pei Ming was like so eager to get Yijin to help. It's not that he's really against Yijin. That was just a rumor that Qirong spread. Imagine that. So thank you for explaining that. I'm glad we got that cleared up. I'm sure some others in the YouTube comments have said this by now, but, and then Anime Annie, I laughed really hard at this because, yeah, you know, I've said on this channel that I get first impressions about characters and my thoughts about characters, and I don't ever want to be spoiled because I like reading a story, and I like the idea that my opinions about characters may change over time. It's something that naturally happens in a story. It happens all the time. You start out with enemies, and those enemies become maybe friends along the way, or they redeem themselves. It's a very tried and true trope in narratives, and I like seeing it happen naturally as I read a story. And, you know, I've softened a little bit on Junwoo, a little bit, as we've gotten to know him. And then Pei Ming, I really did not like at the beginning of this story at all. And as it goes, Anime Annie's like, you know, Pei Ming just kind of, he grows on you like a fungus. And I was like, yes, that's exactly the perfect description. I laughed so hard. I was like, yes, he's like a fungus. Like, I don't necessarily want to like him, and I don't necessarily like him, but I'm like, okay, he's here. He's kind of like Chi-Rong. Chi-Rong lingers like a fart, and you just kind of get accustomed to him, and you're like, yeah, Trash King, you're here. Pei Ming, it's like, okay, we can't be as harsh on you because you're just a mushroom, but you're still not the best. And hopefully my views on Shiwudu will change as well. Because right now, Shiwudu, I'm like, Shiwudu of the Heavenly Officials is probably my least favorite. I get why he's doing the things that he's doing, but it's been detrimental to both his brother and the Heavenly Realm and Scholar Ha, who literally had to die because of his actions when it wasn't supposed to be that way. So I'm very curious to see what more we get on him. But yeah, Pei Ming, just keep the dick jokes coming. Just let's just go with it. At this point, it's almost funny, right? I feel like Pei Ming kind of, it becomes this like pincushion. People just poke him and want to poke him. So it all fits out. All works out, right? All works out. So those are my comments. I've read a lot of comments for these last several chapters, and I've been really, really excited because I think you all know that these last several chapters have been just building and building and building, and here we are, ready to go with seeing what Xie Lian is going to do with Hua Cheng. And Xie Lian has been slowly building this idea about maybe he likes Hua Cheng, or here's my thing. I feel like Xie Lian's body is realizing it's attracted to Hua Cheng. It's reacting in ways, right? His heart and his body is starting to like have a sexual awakening, but it's not caught up to his brain yet. His brain hasn't put two and two together, being like, why do you feel this way, Xie Lian? Oh, we haven't reached that part. And I feel like when the body and the heart connect to the brain for Xie Lian in terms of Hua Cheng, then it's all going to come together, but we're not there yet. And we're only on volume 5. Granted, we're about halfway through volume 5, which is exciting, but we're only on volume 4, and we have 4 more volumes to go. So, lots of time for Xie Lian to figure it out. I'm just glad we made it to this point, right? So, yes, I'm excited, y'all. I hope y'all are too, but we are not going to waste any more time. I'm excited. So, we are going to start chapters 120 and 121 of Heaven Official's Blessing. And we are going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this, y'all. Snapped his eyes open. Chapter 120. Combined Spirit. The coffin boat enters a demon sea. Okay, yeah, we explained that the only way they can get past the black water and not sink is if they're on coffin wood, right? And Hua Cheng's been like just basically saving Xie Lian by swimming with him like in one arm the entire time. So this whole battle has been amazing. I really have liked the black water versus Shiwudu in this. Good times. All right, but because Xie Lian was extremely nervous and overly self-conscious, his eyes stayed shut. Oh my God, so he was oblivious to the situation at hand. Oh no, he's not gonna know. Oh no. The last time they exchanged air underwater, it was Hua Cheng who initiated it. Yes, he was domineering and the kiss was deep. Oh, of course. And afterwards, Xie Lian didn't dare recall the event, only remembering that his lips were swollen and numb. Oh, Hua Cheng was like, this is my chance. I'm going for it. Since he was taking the lead this time, he was cautious and only placed his lips softly on top of the others, as if he was afraid he'd accidentally wake Hua Cheng up by exerting too much force. Oh, I love the difference there. I love that. But upon reflection, wasn't his goal to wake Hua Cheng up? If his kiss was too light and the air was to leak out from the slight gap between their lips, wouldn't this all be for naught? Oh, so he's like, oh, well, you know, I want to be chaste, because that's my style, but I am trying to save him, so wouldn't it be important that I kind of do what Hua Cheng did in my own special way? Ah! Oh, thus, Xie Lian kept his eyes closed, and as he recited excerpts from the Ethics Sutra at lightning speed, he's like, I gotta keep it power, zen moment. He pulled away and gently inhaled before pressing his lips to Hua Cheng's once more. Oh, this time the kiss was much deeper than the one before. He fully captured Hua Cheng's thin, cool lips and gently blew in air. In that process, I'm like, you're not doing CPR, right? In that process, his eyes were closed the entire time, daring to not look. And Hua Cheng the whole time is like, after having delivered 5 or 6 breaths, so 5 or 6 kisses, he thought maybe he should press Hua Cheng's chest for a bit, but who knew? The moment he opened his eyes, he was staring squarely into Hua Cheng's own pair of widened eyes, like, Xie Lian's hands were still cupping Hua Cheng's cheeks. Oh my God, so he was like this. And their lips had only just parted. The sensation of a soft, gentle numbness remained. In an instant, it was like the two both turned into stone statues. As if with but a breeze, they would shatter. And Xie Lian, of course, was petrified, but Hua Cheng, who had always remained carefree in the face of anything, was equally stunned. I mean, his god just made out with him, basically, or kissed him 5 times. He was like, oh my God. Xie Lian really didn't know that he hadn't just died from all the blood rushing to his head, and it was a good moment where he's like, oh, San Long, you're awake. But Hua Cheng didn't speak. He instantly dropped his hands and leapt back. Oh, no, it's not what you think. I just wanted to what, deliver air? Would ghosts need air? Even he himself wouldn't believe it if he had said it out loud. The words got stuck in his throat, and Hua Cheng also pushed himself up, extending a hand towards him as if forcing himself to be calm. Your Highness, just calm down first. I like Hua Cheng's like, oh God, he's gonna bolt again. Xie Lian held his head between his hands. His entire person was a mess, and in the end, he put his hands together as if in prayer and bowed madly at Hua Cheng. I'm sorry. Having shouted his apologies, he whipped around and ran, fleeing the scene. Hua Cheng finally stepped out of it and was like, Your Highness. He's like, I'm sorry. I love he's just like, I'm sorry, like running away. Just die. If you can't die, then just dig a hole somewhere and pretend to be dead. This is such like a Yuri on Ice moment. This is like, he's like, why don't I just crawl in a hole and die? Oh my God, Xie Lian is having a Yuri moment. Oh my God. He dashed rapidly and instantly he charged into the thick of a forest. Oh, because they were on a beach, right? As he ran, something that resembled a sharp arrow came flying towards him. Oh, he might have been under great shock, but his skills were not lacking. He caught a bone spur with the sweep of his hand. He came to an abrupt stop and looked where the attack came from. Yet there was nothing there, only shaky branches. There was danger in the bushes, and he immediately calmed down, turning around and running back. So long! Like, okay, wait, we need to go back. Oh my God. Hua Cheng was already following close behind, and Xie Lian in turn almost made him run into his embrace. Oh, please let him run to his embrace. He grabbed his hand, and dashed out of the woods. There's something in the forest. Hua Cheng, who was chasing after him, was now dragged back to where they came from. It was only when they got back to the beach that Xie Lian let out a breath of relief. Oh, we're not followed, thank goodness. There's some things on this island, but don't worry, they won't follow us here. Suddenly, Xie Lian remembered, how could Hua Cheng possibly be afraid of those things? He turned and looked down, and he was still clutching his hand. And he let go and jumped aside. With some distance between them, they were both silent for a moment before Hua Cheng sighed and pulled at the collar of his clothes. Thank goodness Gege rescued me earlier. A human body is really quite inconvenient. Just going into the sea, I'd choke mouthfuls of water. Disgusting. Xie Lian wasn't dumb. He knew that Hua Cheng was giving him an easy out, but he could only follow along and mumbled vaguely with his head bowed. It's nothing, don't worry about it. After a pause, Hua Cheng added, but Gege didn't do it correctly. Well, did I not? I only thought I needed to blow in some air. Yeah, that's incorrect, Hua Cheng replied. Don't do this to anyone else so casually in the future, or otherwise, ooh, there's a double meaning to that. We'll talk about it in the discussion. Otherwise, not only would he not save a life, he just might end it. There's more to it than that, but we'll talk about it then. He spoke in such a serious tone that Xie Lian felt rather ashamed. Good thing he'd never done such a thing before, otherwise he'd really be committing a sin. Yeah, he's never done CPR, but Hua Cheng that's a clever little thing there. I like what MXTX has done with that trope. We'll talk about it in the discussion. I won't. Hua Cheng nodded and then grinned. Although Xie Lian really wanted to ask Hua Cheng for some instructions on how it should be done. He dared not speak any more on the matter. Xie Lian's going to owe Hua Cheng a lot. Like, if he's like, can you give me CPR instructions? Hua Cheng's going to owe me more. Mm-hmm. Is this island really deserted without a trace of people? Of course. This is the heart of the Blackwater demon lair, Blackwater Island. He was very confident. The Crimson Rain-Sought Flower and ship-sinking Blackwater must know each other. Ah, so how long have you been here before? Never. But I know of this island. I wonder where the Lord Windmasters and the others have drifted to, whether they're on this island too. This place was a Blackwater demon lair in the South Sea. Ming's main domain was the north. The Earthmaster wasn't a martial god, and there was no need to speak on what condition the Windmaster was in. If anything should happen and they incurred the ire of the Blackwater demon Jean, the only one who could fight back would be the Watermaster. Yet who knew when Shiwudu's heavenly calamity would hit? The current situation was not looking very optimistic. Xie Lian asked, San Long, does the Blackwater demon Jean have a temper? If heavenly officials accidentally intruded into his domain and entered his house, what would he do? It's hard to say, but Gege should have heard that saying before too. Crimson rules the land, black masters the sea. Here at the Blackwater demon lair, even I have to watch my step. Not just because this was the heart of the Blackwater's domain, but also as one supreme to another. Hua Cheng should leave the other some face so they could interact in the future. Yeah, I would say with the exception of Bai Wu Shang, and Qi Rong, then those two really don't want to get on each other's nerves. Then we best leave here soon. They circled around the island, but the two never re-entered the forest. Xie Lian called out a few times, but didn't hear the Windmaster or anyone else respond. Maybe they didn't drift back to Blackwater Island. The two came back to the beach. The surface of the sea was still heavy with gloom. Xie Lian picked up a log from the ground and threw it far out into the distance. A log such as one that should technically float on water, yet upon the surface of the sea meters away, it instantly sank. Xie Lian looked back at the thick forest and said, It looks like it'd be useless to build a canoe. The distance shortening array won't work here either. How do you think we should leave the island? Who says it's useless? But only coffin wood that's housed the deceased can float in the Blackwater demon lair. Before he finished, he immediately remembered. Coffin wood. There were trees here everywhere, and a deceased. There was one right before his eyes. Sure enough. Oh, because Hua Cheng's already died. Okay, so it doesn't have to be a recently deceased. It could be somebody that's died before. Okay, that makes more sense. I was like, are we going to have to kill somebody in the last reaction? But no, Hua Cheng's already dead. Good, okay. Sure enough, Hua Cheng smiled. Won't it be fine once I lie inside? Although he was smiling, Xie Lian's heart squeezed for some reason. Hua Cheng flattened his palm, and the scimitar and Ming appeared within that palm. Since they said they'd do it, they went straight to work and started collecting materials. They didn't go deep into the forest, they didn't run into any ambushing creatures, and soon enough, they had managed to chop down a number of trees. A whole day of labor went by in the blink of an eye, and the sky was growing dim. I don't like the fact that a whole day has gone by, and they haven't heard from anybody else. The two divided the work and fought each other to take up tasks, so their efficiency was amazingly high. By evening, the coffin was pretty much built. Throughout the entire journey, Xie Lian had only eaten a half a steamed bun and was already bitterly starved. But the sooner the coffin was made, the sooner they could leave. So only once the coffin was formed did he have to find an excuse to go catch some fish. Yet within the waters of the Blackwater demon lair, how could there be fish? Returning empty-handed. Oh no! Xie Lian turned around to the edge of the forest and picked up a few wild fruits from a non-dangerous area. Who knew that once he returned, Hua Cheng had already started a small campfire. He sat by the fire, one hand supporting his cheek, while the other held a branch, a wild hare forked upon it being roasted. Of course. The wild hare was already cleaned up, its skin roasted such that it was dripping with juice, crisp and golden, the smell of meat fragrant, exceedingly alluring. Once he saw Xie Lian had come back, Hua Cheng smiled and moved his hand, passing the branch over. Xie Lian took it and exchanged the wild fruits for it. These are all edible. Both were still wet and dripping. And other than that, they were soaked in the seawater. Their clothes were also damp from sweat. However, they both had a tacit understanding and didn't mention anything about stripping out of their clothes to dry them. Yeah, it's a little awkward for that, right? The meat of the wild hare was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. Having bitten in lightly, Xie Lian's teeth could feel the burn, and he couldn't stop biting into the meat, its deliciousness staying on his lips. You're making me hungry, MXTX. Still, Xie Lian divided the portion in half, giving the other to Hua Cheng before sighing in awe. San Long has such amazing skills. Oh, really? Then thanks, Gege, for the compliment. Oh my god, shut up! I'd say get a room, but you're on this island by yourselves. It's true. Whether it be carpentry or cooking, I've never met anyone better than you. That noble, gracious, special someone really lucked out. Oh, are you freaking kidding me? Oh my god, when he said this, he acted like he was very focused on eating his hair. But Hua Cheng seemed to be silent. Hua Cheng is going, ah! Inside! It was a moment later before Hua Cheng's soft voice came. That I could meet that person. It's me who lucked out. You, oh my god! You're just setting this up for the being like, oh! Just setting it up for it being like the best reveal ever to Xie Lian. Oh my god, and Xie Lian, you're so dense! Oh! Xie Lian didn't know what to say and seemed to focus even harder on eating. It was a while later before he realized Hua Cheng was calling him, Gege, Gege. What? He passed him a handkerchief, and it was only then that Xie Lian realized he was chomping too hard. Half his face was covered in grease. It's exceedingly silly. Instantly, he felt embarrassed, and he reached for the handkerchief to wipe himself clean. Hua Cheng passed him the other half of the roasted hair. Gege must be starving. Don't rush yourself. He took the roasted hair and was slightly stunned for a moment, but in the end, he couldn't hold back. So long. Oh, I was gonna keep asking about it! Xie Lian! Xie Lian! So long, just what kind of person is that special someone? How come you haven't won them over yet? Oh my god! MXTX, I hate you! You're teasing the cliffhanger and the tease! He genuinely believed that if Hua Cheng wanted anyone, there'd be no one on this earth who could resist his advances. Yet, that day, Hua Cheng had said that he hadn't won that person over yet. He couldn't help but feel rather grim, and an odd feeling towards this person that the Ghost King fancy grew. Maybe it was because he felt the other party didn't have good taste, or maybe they were taking it all for granted. Oh! Hua Cheng replied, It's all right if Gege finds it funny. The truth is, I'm afraid. Whether it was from a sense of injustice or fear that Hua Cheng was deprecating himself, Xie Lian responded in a serious tone. What is there to be afraid of? You are Supreme Ghost King, the Crimson Rain sought flower. Hua Cheng laughed out loud. What shitty Ghost King? If I was really that awesome, I wouldn't have been so powerless when people hung me up to beat me hundreds of years ago. Well, you can't say it like that, Xie Lian said. Everyone has to go through it to grow up. But just as he said it, he recalled that when he first ascended, he didn't seem to have ever experienced humiliation of that sort. And he cleared his throat lightly. That person saw me at my worst, Hua Cheng said. Then I'm very envious of that, Xie Lian replied. Hearing him say so, Hua Cheng gazed over. Xie Lian stopped eating and said gently, But I can sort of understand your feelings. After a pause, he continued, There was also a period of time in my life that wasn't easy, and during that time I'd constantly think, if someone should witness the version of me who rolled in the dirt and couldn't get up, but could still love me for who I was, it'd be great. Still, I don't know if there's anyone like that. And I daren't show that part of my past to anyone either. But if it's someone San Long yearns for, I think even if they saw you at your worst, they wouldn't say something like, you're not so great after all. His face grew solemn. To me, the one basking in infinite glory is you. The one fallen from grace is also you. What matters is you, not the state of you. I admire San Long very much, so I want you to understand you're everything. So I'm very envious that someone has already met that kind of you. It's an affinity that comes by chance and couldn't be begged for. Whether that bond should continue, it's 3 parts fate and 7 parts courage. Oh my God! The campfire was crackling soundly, and for a good while the two remained silent. Xie Lian softly cleared his throat and rubbed his forehead. Have I said too much? How embarrassing. No, what you said was good. Very right, Hua Cheng replied. Xie Lian let out a breath of relief and quickly returned to munching on his wild hair. Hua Cheng added, not just that, but there's also many other reasons. Xie Lian felt he spoke too much and wanted to end the subject immediately. Besides, he just couldn't understand why he would say so much just now and why encourage Hua Cheng to bravely pursue his beloved. It wasn't like he was the heavenly official in charge of marriage, so he could only mumble a reply, and after that speech, the air between the two seemed rather delicate, and they quickly finished eating to continue their labor, and soon that coffin was officially complete. Oh my God! When they find out, when Hua Cheng he's not going to tell Xie Lian, but when Xie Lian figures out it's him he's talking about, Oh my freaking God. Oh. Hua Cheng pushed the newly constructed coffin into the water, and he hopped in lightly, sitting inside. A chunk of wood that long and heavy really floated on the water, and it didn't sink. That coffin had been made wide in width, so Xie Lian lifted his robes to step in. It didn't feel like there was enough space to sit. Just then, muffled roars of thunder rang in the skies, and gloomy clouds rolled. Violet flashes of lightning streaked faintly. Sounds of explosions erupted next to the ears unexpectedly here and there. Thin threads of rain came falling down from the skies, and they came thicker and thicker. It seemed a storm was approaching. Fortunately, the two didn't slack off while laboring and even building a cover for the coffin. Oh, otherwise it wouldn't take long for it to be filled with rainwater once it pushed out into the sea and sinked into the depths. The two looked at each other, and Xie Lian said in a low voice, "Sorry." They've got to get the coffin together, closed in. Oh my God! Hua Cheng didn't say anything more either and laid down inside the coffin. Xie Lian entered too and pulled the cover closed. As if a light was blown out, they sunk into darkness. Ah! Oh my God! They're just floating on the water, just the two of them, like on top of each other, right? The coffin entered the sea and floated errantly for a while. Outside, pouring rain was beating on the cover, and within, the two spoke not a word. Being squished in a narrow space, their bodies couldn't help but be pressed hard against one another. Oh my God! Allowing the waves to push and pull, flip and flop. Xie Lian used one hand to push against the edge of the coffin to steady himself, hoping to make more room, his head lightly knocking against the wood. Hua Cheng reached out and rested his hand on his back, pressing him to his chest, his other hand shielding his head. Xie Lian didn't even dare to breathe harshly. "San Lan, how about we change around?" "Change what?" Hua Cheng asked. Shut! Oh my God! 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 "You on top and me on bottom," Xie Lian replied. "Isn't top and bottom the same?" Oh. Xie Lian was afraid he was too heavy. "Shut up!" and said, "This journey of ours will take at least a day. A day! Your body right now is only 17 or 18, right? I'm a martial god, after all. Very heavy. Before he finished his words, he added, "So long. Don't just suddenly turn big." Oh my God! MXTX words! Although it was hard to see in the dark, he could still feel Hua Cheng, who was pressed close against him, transforming. Oh! While that change was minute, he still sensed it, and assumed that Hua Cheng probably transformed back into his true form. Sure enough, when Hua Cheng spoke again, his laugh was in a deeper voice. Veritably, the voice of his true form. Xie Lian laid on his chest, helpless. But after the change, that unknown awkwardness did lighten a bit. He raised his legs slightly, hoping to shift his body and change positions, but suddenly Hua Cheng stopped laughing. He said in a dark voice, "Don't move." Oh. Xie Lian froze just then. There was a large sound, and the coffin the two were riding in violently sank. "What's going on?" Soon after, there was another roaring sound. The two forcibly flipped around inside the coffin. It seemed the entire coffin canoe itself had rolled around. Thank goodness there weren't any leaks, but that couldn't be guaranteed since there were multiple rounds. There should be multiple rounds. Hua Cheng pressed down on him. Something's got its eye on this coffin canoe. Oh, MXTX! Oh, that chapter! Oh my God! Oh my God! Ah! Okay. Sure, yes, of course. Chapter 121, Combined Spirit. The coffin boat enters the demon sea. 2. Just as the words left his lips, the two suddenly felt weightless once more, and their positions changed from lying to upright. That coffin boat abruptly rose up and swiftly plunged, forcibly flipping upside down. Hua Cheng had his arms tight around Xie Lian's waist, his other hand shielding his head. He exclaimed, "Hold on to me tight!" If this was the outside, all the spinning could be 3 times more violent, and Xie Lian would be able to deal with it. The problem was they were trapped inside a narrow, tight space, their limbs unable to stretch out, ignorant of what was happening outside. Tense and anxious, Xie Lian wondered, what if the coffin boat breaks? "Don't worry. Even if it breaks, I'm here. You won't sink," Hua Cheng said. At this moment, they were both pressed against each other firmly, and Hua Cheng's words were uttered through the brush of his lips over Xie Lian's hair. Oh my God! And Xie Lian could almost feel the slight trembling of his Adam's apple. His mind was going astray. Then his attention was stolen away by another wave of violent rolling. It was like this boat had become a toy, being jostled about by a toddler, shaking and swinging it unceasingly. Without any other choice, Xie Lian embraced Hua Cheng tightly with one hand, and the other held onto the edge of the coffin. Amidst the chaos, the two dipped and dropped, flipped and flopped into who knows how many different positions, banging heavily into all sorts of different parts of each other. That wording! Thoroughly rubbing against one another. Oh my God! Even though Hua Cheng had the appearance of a young man, it was only after being tumbled about like this that Xie Lian realized Hua Cheng was solid and hard from top to bottom. Xie Lian was going starry-eyed from this torment. And when the feeling finally faded for a moment, he found that Hua Cheng was now on top of him, pressing down heavily, suffocating him. Is the black water just being a matchmaker too? Is this all part of Hua Cheng's elaborate plan? With great difficulty, Xie Lian raised his hand and grabbed onto the arm of Hua Cheng that he was using to support himself up next to his body. He softly groaned, his head spinning. Is it over yet? For some reason, Hua Cheng didn't respond. Before Xie Lian finished his sentence, his breath suddenly hitched. Because he suddenly noticed that a certain body part of his was experiencing an unthinkable shift. Oh no. In an instant, Xie Lian felt more incredulous than if he was to see a steel tree blossom. At least, if he saw a steel tree blossom, his mind wouldn't be this blank. A horrifying embarrassment and awkwardness battered him more violently than the tempest was battering the coffin inside. On the outside, Xie Lian hastily closed his knees. However, closing his knees didn't seem to be the right move. He seemed to have touched something he shouldn't have because Hua Cheng grunted brusquely, "Oh my God, don't move!" That grunt was deep and sharp, and Xie Lian quickly flattened his legs again. If he didn't close his knees, he was scared that Hua Cheng might notice his body's reaction, in which case he might as well smash his own head against the coffin and die. This couldn't have been explained away by an unavoidable natural reaction, but the awkward thing was, it could have been explained away by an unavoidable natural reaction, but the awkward thing was, there was already that incident on that island. Once or twice he could say this was unintentional, but after the third or fourth time, how could he possibly explain himself? Under such dire situation, Xie Lian blurted, No, so long, no, don't touch me. After a brief moment of silence, Hua Cheng said with a dark voice, Very well. Let's break out of here. Oh, no, he's gonna get the wrong idea. It was like he was absolved and cried, Go! Suddenly another vicious weightlessness attacked, and the coffin that contained the two was thrust into the air. At the same time, Hua Cheng and Xie Lian both smacked their palm on either side of the coffin. Instantly, it cracked into pieces. The two broke out of the boat, and the pair leapt out under the moonlight. Xie Lian looked back and saw a giant water dragon dangle broken pieces of that coffin in its mouth, roaring in the pouring rain, baring its sharp teeth, as if raging at the empty casket it thought was full of food. It must have been that water dragon just then that was throwing the coffin boat around in its mouth, snapping here and twisting there. The coffin boat had gone out to sea first and drifted for a while, but it was dragged back by that water dragon. The two landed and returned to the Blackwater Island once more. So we're back where we started. Back at the beach, there were two more figures. Okay! It was the Water Master, Wudu, and General Pei. Shi Wudu had his spiritual seal out, beckoning the rain and winds as if he was going to summon that water dragon. Pei Ming patted his shoulder. Water Master Zhang, just take it easy, will you? This round is over, but who knows when the next round will come, so save your energy for now. It turns out that sudden pouring rain just now was the accompaniment to Shi Wudu's heavenly calamity. The storm was calming down, and Shi Wudu threw his hands, turning to Hua Cheng and Xie Lian. What's with you two? Yeah, Your Highness. Why don't you explain yourselves? What's going on? What were you two doing in there? Ah! When that coffin boat exploded, their tight embrace was displayed for all to see. Xie Lian blinked and was about to speak when he suddenly realized that both he and Hua Cheng, after having tumbled around inside the narrow coffin boat, had their hair mussed and their clothes disheveled. They appeared as inappropriate as one could imagine. And after having wiped away the rain off his face, his cheeks were still burning. Hua Cheng took a step forward, shielding him. A moment later, Xie Lian softly cleared his throat. Oh, nothing's going on, just the coffin's too small. Shi Wudu puzzled. I wasn't asking about that. Pei Ming pointed all the leftover wooden pieces that were left behind on the beach. The coffin was made on the spot, right? Why didn't you build a bigger one? cabin boat was decided by both Hua Cheng and Xie Lian. And at the time, it seemed neither of them thought about building it bigger. So Xie Lian could only laugh awkwardly. You're right. Did my lords only just drift to this island? Let's change the subject. That's right. Pei Ming replied, Watermaster Zhang battled against the currents of this black water demon layer, and we only just made it to this island. Didn't expect to see a coffin drift about on the surface of the black water demon layer seas. What a curious sight. Xie Lian could feel his heart dropping, and he smiled. Rather curious, and really curious indeed. You, Xie said. He turned to Hua Cheng and squinted. On the ship, didn't you say that only coffin wood that has carried the deceased won't sink in the black water demon layer? Ah, he's back into his old form. Pei Ming pulled out his sword and said leisurely, yeah, there's the coffin wood, but where's the deceased? Hua Cheng smiled too. If you're so concerned with who's dead, I suggest you go kill yourself. Oh! Pei Ming pointed his sword at him with such arrogance, as expected of the crimson rain sought flower. As suspected, he had already guessed. Yeah, I'm sure he guessed the moment they entered the boat. Hua Cheng burst out laughing, and seeing that a fight was about to start, Xie Lian stepped in front of Hua Cheng to block. My lords, please calm yourself. There's no need to worry. San Long is on this journey out of generosity. San Long? Pei Ming wondered. I've never heard of how Crimson Rain Sought Flower ranked from whatever house. Generous. Your Highness, are you sure that's the word to describe him? Xie had to stand in the spotlight. So he pushed Pei Ming aside. Oh, he said sharply, are you the one messing things up on this trip? What's your intention in luring us to the Blackwater Demon Lair? Where's Xingshang? This is someone else's territory. Did you think I want to be here? Hua Cheng answered. Xie Lian was already used to this kind of situations. I mean, he's lived with Feng Shen and Mu Qing, right? And so he pushed Pei Ming aside. He said sharply, are you the one messing things up on this trip? Oh, wait. Okay. Okay, no, let me find my place. He was already used to these kind of situations and changed the subject with practiced ease. Has the Lord Windmaster not been found yet? Didn't General Pei go looking for them? Pei Ming flipped open his arms. Well, they were fished up at first, but a giant wave from Watermaster Zhang came and flushed them away. Ah, don't mislead, Pei Zhang, Xie said. I can't raise waves. Those creatures in the sea kept coming one after the other. You couldn't find them in the first place. Oh, calm down. Lord Windmaster is together with Lord Earthmaster, so there shouldn't be any big trouble. Oh, Xie humphed. Earthmaster? What good is the Earthmaster? Mediocre and average. He's not a martial god, and his spiritual powers aren't even as strong as Xingshang's. Then he seemed to suddenly remember that the Windmaster no longer possessed any trace of spiritual powers. His face fell and he fell silent. Xie Lian, however, thought every spiritual stream had their own focus. Although Ming Yi wasn't a martial god, and his spiritual powers weren't exactly strong, he still wasn't as horrible as the Watermaster described. Besides, the skills of the Earthmaster showed at the time at Banyu Pass weren't terrible. Even if he wasn't the best, he wasn't the worst. Pei Ming said too, don't be too worried just yet. As long as they don't run into the Demon Zhan, the Earthmaster should be able to take care of things. Hua Cheng laughed. This heavenly calamity is already pursuing you everywhere, fighting you. You made a huge mess of his lair, and you actually dare hope that the lair master hasn't noticed? Suddenly, Xie face twitched, and he took out a golden longevity locket out of the collar of his robes. Pei Ming asked Master Waterzhang, did something happen? The golden longevity locket seemed to be vibrating his palm. Xie said, Xingshang is close by and he's hurt. Xie Lian took a look at the locket, and it looked exactly the same as the one the Windmaster was wearing that day. The one he removed to build the protection array and left behind in the end. Is the Lord Windmaster still wearing that longevity locket? I recall he removed it before. I picked it up and put it around him again, Xie said. It turns out those two longevity lockets were forged by golden cores of the two brothers. Oh, okay. When they were near each other and one was hurt, the lockets would call out to each other. The closer they were to each other, the stronger the cry. This wasn't a spell, but rather a natural attribute, so it was unaffected by the power of the demon layer. Xie removed the longevity locket from his neck and dangled the chain from his hand. He held out his arms straight and slowly turned in a circle. When he was facing a certain direction, the vibration would grow stronger. It was the direction of the forest, towards the unfathomably deep heart of this lonely island. Xie said grimly, it looks like Xingshang is on the island right now. Then he strode in large steps towards the forest. Naturally, Pei Ming followed along. Xie Lian contemplated, since the Wind and Earth Masters were both on the island and the Wind Master seemed to be injured or bleeding. They should be found first, and they could worry about the rest later. My lords, there are minions hidden inside the forest. Be careful of ambush. Hua Cheng came to follow too. Xie Lian was going to grab for his hand at first, but then he remembered the disgraceful state back inside the coffin boat, and the outstretched hand shrank back in spite of himself. In the end, he tugged onto Hua Cheng's sleeve, not daring to look at the face of the other. Pei Ming, however, looked back frequently and appeared to be very interested. Pei Ming, dude, you got a bunch of romance novels in your summer hut somewhere. You are all about this. Crimson Rain-Sought Flower, your highness, the two of you really are stuck together like glue. A ghost king like yourself following after us so openly. Aren't you even going to try and avoid suspicion? Xie Lian replied languidly, What is General Pei saying? Under these circumstances, it's less suspicious if it comes along. Otherwise, if my lords were to run into any dangers, how can he hope to clear his name if my lords were to suspect him? He's made it to the title of Supreme. So what's the difference if he's in front of our eyes or not? Would it not be easy for him to simply create a clone? Pei Ming said. Just as the words left his lips, a sharp sound ripped through the air. Pei Ming raised his hands and caught a stealth arrow. So there is something that was close. Watermaster Zhang, be careful. Before he finished speaking, there were more swishing sounds, and several more stealth arrows came flying towards them, cling, clang. Pei Ming swept his sword around and wondered woefully, What the hell? Xie Wudu laughed out loud. Pei Zhang, I think you best watch yourself instead. Then he quickened his pace. It was only ambushing arrows. It wasn't anything to be afraid of, just really annoying. Irritated, Pei Ming flattened a field of shrubbery and soon picked out a few little minions. You guys got guts! Those little ghosts looked scrawny and sallow-skinned. Only the lowest of minions. Hanging from his hand, they were terrified by the general into little balls, begging for mercy. They were only guarding the door, after all, so fighting intruders couldn't be helped. After scaring them with some words, Pei Ming let them go. However, when they ran into more cunning and vicious ones later, Pei Ming squashed them into a ball and dribbled them as they made their way. The four of them brushed away branches and pushed their way through the bushes through the thick forest, walking for who knows how long. But the golden locket at Xie Wudu's hand was crying louder and louder. Finally, they reached the large empty area within the middle of the forest. The heart of the forest was a lake, and the four walked towards it. Suddenly, Pei Ming spoke up. Crimson Rain-Sought Flower, if you keep this prank up, I won't be able to tolerate you any longer. Both Hua Cheng and Xie Lian looked at him and looked at each other. Pei Ming frowned. If you want to fight, then challenge me like a man. Pei isn't like those 33 heavenly officials. I'm not afraid of you. Shoving me every now and then is meaningless. Hua Cheng raised his brows. Gege, you have to believe me. That's got nothing to do with me. General Pei, he doesn't play those meaningless pranks. Really? Xie Lian became alarmed. Be careful. It might be someone else on this island that's stirring trouble. Pei Ming stopped talking. Just then, Xie Wudu slowed his pace. It's here. That golden longevity locket seemed to be crying its hardest at this place, meaning that the Windmaster was somewhere close. Yet everything here could be seen clearly, and other than the lake, there was nothing else. Could there be an underground palace? Pei Ming wondered. Xie Wudu stared at the surface of the water, and Xie Lian said it's also possible that it's at the bottom of the water. However, this lake on Blackwater Island shouldn't be entered so randomly, lest one be unable to resurface. The surface of the lake was calm without ripples, appearing like a giant mirror. Reflecting the blanched moon hung high in the night sky without stars or clouds. The four walked along the edge of the lake, and Xie Lian, who was still thinking about how to investigate the bottom of the lake, when without warning a terrified scream ripped through the night air. The one leading the group was Xie Wudu. The one bringing up the rear was Pei Ming. The three in front all looked back. The one who screamed was the little ghost that Pei Ming had captured on the road. Its skull was gone, the black blood spurting meters high from its neck, the head that was flung into the air screaming, piercing. General Pei, what are you doing killing it so suddenly? Xie Lian asked, but Pei Ming, however, exclaimed, No! Before he could explain, his body sank, one knee hitting the ground. Hua Cheng laughed. There's no need for such formalities. Yet Pei Ming's expression was starkly shocked. He shouted, Watermaster Zhang, watch out! However, what was there to watch out for? Other than the four of them by the lake, there was nothing else. It was as if Pei Ming was bound by something invisible. Xie Wudu was rushing over to help him when suddenly a flash of chilling light from the air greeted him instead. He dodged it just in time, and yet a trail of blood was sliced across one of his cheeks. He wiped it with his hand, and then his face dropped. Xie Lian placed himself in front of Hua Cheng to shield him and said the invisibility spell. Pei Ming finally broke free of that thing that was formlessly constraining him and shouted, "Gather round, don't break up." But Shiwudu didn't care. The moment he felt the longevity locket start crying again, he started charging around the lake, frantically calling out, "Xing Chong, Xing Chong!" It was a chaotic situation. However, it was precisely amidst this ruckus that Xie Lian suddenly noticed something exceedingly unnerving. Along the edge of the lake shore, the area was flat and empty, nothing to be seen. However, the lake shore reflected the lake's surface was different. In the reflection, upon the other shore of the lake stood a charcoal black building. The building was chillingly gloomy, looking nothing like the residence, but more so a prison. There was no door, only a set of windows high above, unforgivingly sealing by rows of iron bars. From between those iron bars peeked a pale white hand, waving desperately as if begging for help. "Oh, it's invisible!" Xie Lian whipped his head up and looked to the shore before him. There was veritably nothing besides Shiwudu holding out the longevity locket. When he looked down again, the reflection in the lake was so veritably showed the chilling iron prison. Shiwudu was searching around right before that iron prison, but he couldn't see it. "My lords, found it! Look!" Just then his pupils suddenly shrank. Something new was reflected within the black water lake. A shadowy figure had appeared soundlessly behind both him and Hua Cheng. "No! No, no, no! Oh, God, no! Ow! Oh, my God! Oh, y'all! Oh, y'all! Oh, MXTX, you are delivering! MXTX is trying to kill me. Oh my God. These two chapters, you know what? Okay, I'm thinking about it. And okay, volume 1 was fine. Volume 1's my least favorite of all the volumes. I do appreciate volume 1 a lot because it keeps tying back to everything else in the story, and MXTX keeps threading back to it. So I really appreciate the importance of volume 1, but it's my least favorite volume. Volume 2 is probably my second least favorite volume because even though it's really, really good and we get the Windmaster shenanigans with Xie Lian and things are much happier times and we get Hua Cheng eating the steam bun and all that sort of thing, it's fine. But volumes 3 and 4 so far have been my jam. And I'm really torn because we are technically now halfway through volume 4. And it's all been about the Windmaster journey. Like, it's all been about the Windmaster struggle and everything they're going through. So on the one hand, what I really like about volume 3 is, well, Bai Wusheng, but also the fact that it is so rich. Volume 3 is so rich and deep with like the backstory and lore behind Xie Lian's first ascension, all the flashback information, the stuff with Feng Shen and Mu Qing, the stuff with Qi Rong, tying that all together. There's so much depth and a plethora of different things happening in that volume that I really appreciate it, and I love getting that backstory. But emotionally, this volume's kind of my jam because there's not as much overall things happening. It's mainly we're dealing with the Windmaster and them being like finding out about their ascension being forged and dealing with the calamity of the Watermaster, which we'll talk about that. But I feel like on the one hand, there doesn't seem to be like as many different things going on. It's really just one story with lots of things happening within it. But the emotions, oh my gosh, like the stuff, Pei Ming trying to Scooby-Doo his way into this, being like, why are you guys around each other all the time? What's going on? Why are you guys like, are you holding hands? Like Pei Ming, just come out and say it, right? At this point, I'm wanting Pei Ming to just come out and just say it and be like, do you like the Hua Cheng? But I feel like it's so unheard of that Pei Ming's like, you don't really like Hua Cheng, the Crimson Rain sought flower. There's no way. A heavenly official loving a supreme ghost? The scandal. Like, I feel like Pei Ming, who has been around sexual scandals his entire life, is for the first time getting the chance to kind of bear witness to one himself. And he's kind of like all about it. And he's like, I just imagine Pei Ming has a stack of romance novels under his bed. We like to think Pei Ming is really serious and he's like such a bro. And he's like, yes, I am this domineering Fabio. But it would be really hilarious if Pei Ming was actually like a huge romantic and just like shoujo manga and liked girly romance stories. And he's like, well, actually, that's how he's able to woo all the ladies. He's read all the romance novels. He knows all the tropes. That's how he's been able to do it all all this time, right? So I just feel like that Hua Cheng and Xie Lian, their story, Pei Ming's caught on, and whereas the Wind Master and Earth Master, they kind of just let it go. They're like, oh yeah, you guys do your own thing. We're not going to intrude. Pei Ming's like, let me in. I want to see this happening. I'm like, oh dude. And the Water Master's just worried about the Wind Master, so they don't have time for any of this. And we're possibly about to meet the Blackwater. So I'm like, or it could be a fake out. Or it could be a fake out and it could just be a giant monster like the Water Dragon. I don't know. I do like the fact that the Blackwater is really not wanting to have anything to do with them all. They're just like, no. There's a lot of interesting things going on in this set of chapters, and so I wanted to bring out Whiteboard Kun. I thought about not doing it, but then I was like, no, we need to talk about a couple things and outline them. But Xie Lian! Not impotent. Oh my god, MXTX. What is so amazing about these two chapters is that everything is so innocent and restrained in comparison to Modao Zushi. It really is. We were talking in the Discord because the final volume of Modao Zushi has been released with the English translation, and it contains all the extra stories, and the extra stories are the spicy ones, and I'm like, whoa, can't look at a sword the same way again, not after reading that story. So I feel like MXTX gets so raunchy in Modao Zushi in those extra stories, like very kinky and raunchy, that this is like the most tame, wholesome, like honey and oats grandma love story in comparison. But it's starting to get a little spicy, and I'm really excited because of the groundwork that's being laid in these chapters, and you know the payoff is coming. The payoff's gonna be there, and God, I'm ready. I'm already ready. It's not going to come to like volume 7 or 8, and it's going to be torture waiting on it. But the payoff, MXTX, you're setting up the trope, and I'm here for it, but I'm like so frustrated because I know what's going to have to happen to get there. And I'm like, maybe MXTX will surprise us. But we need to go through this chapter set, and talk about this episode of Heaven Officials Blessing reactions and talk about this. Because, yeah, Xie Lian's had a sexual awakening. It took him 800 years, but we finally made it, right? Our 800-year-old virgin. He finally made it, y'all. Good for Xie Lian. So we're going to put Xie Lian up here and just talk about him. We're going to have Xie Lian over here. Hua Cheng, we're gonna add Hua Cheng right beside him. One thing I really appreciate about Hua Cheng as a character is that he can give it back. You know, Pei Ming tries to get on his goat, and Pei Ming tries to like get at him this entire time. And if Hua Cheng had an anger problem or was super, you know, easily irritated or just not as professional as he is, especially around his gege, then he would probably have slaughtered Pei Ming by now because he would have been so annoying to him. But Hua Cheng understands that, nope, can't do that around Xie Lian. So I love that Hua Cheng just has that quick comeback, that quick wit, like, oh, bitch, what? And then just brings it back around. And Shiwudu just doesn't have time for any of them. Speaking of which, we're going to put Pei Ming right here. Our main characters here. We sadly do not get much of the Windmaster or Ming Yi in these chapters. The Windmaster apparently is being held prisoner in maybe the Blackwater's secret shadow castle. Where's Ming Yi? Probably held there too. They're probably prisoners together because why not? Also, why is the Blackwater holding him hostage? Don't know. Not sure yet. But then we have Ming Yi. I have suspicions. We're going to talk about that. Not Ming Yi. The Water Master. Shiwudu. We're going to talk about it. I have suspicions. They're probably wrong. I have theories. They're probably wrong. But we're going to talk about them anyway. So, yeah. Oh, my God. These chapters were sending me. I was just like, the moment Xie Lian was like, well, you be the top and I'll be the bottom. I was like, ha ha! How? Hua Cheng deserves a medal. All the medals. Because Xie Lian was baiting him so hard without realizing it. And Hua Cheng was like, we'll just keep going. I just imagine that Hua Cheng is like the blinking gif where he's like, like that the whole time. Ah! Okay, we need to talk about this. So, let's first of all talk about how the fact that Xie Lian does not know proper CPR. Not at all. Well, and Hua Cheng's like, yeah, don't ever do that again. Which, I wanted to bring that up. So, Xie Lian, like, manages to kiss Hua Cheng 5 or 6 times. Hua Cheng is in a state of euphoric panic because he's like, my deity, my god that I worship and love more than life itself is kissing me. So, and multiple times. So, and Hua Cheng, you know, being the respectful supreme ghost that he is like, I'll just let this happen. And then Xie Lian just has a major freak out, right? Because here's the deal. Xie Lian freaks out. He freaks out because he is worried about Hua Cheng being uncomfortable. That's his problem. Xie Lian is polite to a fault, right? And that's such a kind of interesting dynamic of how Xie Lian has changed over time, because back in volume 3 during the flashback chapters, Xie Lian wasn't quite as, I don't think, as caring of what other people kind of thought. He would run into the Goshi and speak his mind. He would say this or that and be like, well, I'm the crown prince. This is just how it goes. And it was never that he was mean-spirited or snobby or anything like that. But Xie Lian just never, he never kind of gave off the air of, oh, is everything okay? Are you sure you're okay? He just didn't do that. And over time, after all the things that have happened to Xie Lian has kind of gotten to that point where he doesn't make other people uncomfortable. And Hua Cheng kind of gives him a little bit of grief about it because he's like, hey, stand up for yourself. Don't be like that. Like, you take care of you and then the others will come later. And Xie Lian's still kind of in that self-sacrificial mode of, well, let me make sure everybody else is okay first and then me. And Hua Cheng doesn't like that. So Xie Lian, it's not that Xie Lian necessarily is freaked out that he kissed Hua Cheng. That's not the case. It's the fact that he thinks Hua Cheng is freaked out about it. He's like, oh my god, I didn't mean to kiss you. You must be so embarrassed and I'm so ashamed. I'm sorry, I didn't want to put you in this compromising position. Not realizing that Hua Cheng is 100% down for this, as long as Xie Lian's down for it. So there's this classic miscommunication where Xie Lian thinks that he's freaked Hua Cheng out and he's embarrassed Hua Cheng and he's like, oh no, I've made my friend look terrible. Why did I do that? Whereas you have Hua Cheng, who kind of has the misunderstanding that he's thinking Xie Lian wants no part of him in a sexual way. Or we'll put romantic under it. In a sexual or romantic way. And as we've seen Xie Lian's body react, that might not be the case. But again, the body and heart are linking up, but they've not connected to the brain yet. We've not sent the right messages to Xie Lian being like, you are attracted to this man. You want this man. Maybe you should act on it. We've not gotten to that point yet where Xie Lian's just not, he's not fully understood what he himself thinks. So, God, I love that Xie Lian, that Hua Cheng tries to calm him down and he just runs into the forest, has arrow shot at him and runs right back. Like, nope, never mind. So they come back to the beach, right? I like that this, again, the one thing about this volume in comparison to volume 3, in volume 3, we travel all over the place. We do stay in the kingdom of Shanla, but we travel from place to place, to the mountains, to the forest. We come back to the barracks, to the temples. Like, we go all over the place and do lots of things. Like I said in other reactions, this volume is just kind of like circling around in little circles and slowly making its way to different places, but it's doing so in a very, very roundabout way. Like a whirlpool, like we said in the last reaction. Because we start out on this island, and where do we end up at the end of the chapter set? Back on this island. So we don't really go anywhere, and there's not a lot of like things, there's things happening, but they don't like lead to other places. They just kind of stay in one area. But there's all these emotions and development though that I still really like it. I like this volume a lot. Right now, this is still my second favorite volume next to 3, but if it keeps going the way that it is, especially after these 2 chapters, I might change my tune. We'll see. But yeah, so Hua Cheng gives Xie Lian grief and is like, you didn't do it correctly. And Xie Lian's like, oh, I just thought I needed to blow in some air. And he's like, no, that's not how you do CPR at all. But here's what I want to talk about. He says, don't do this to anyone so casually in the future. Otherwise, what I like about this moment is that it is taking a very tried and true BL trope and kind of giving it the Hua Cheng spin, right? Because he says, you know, in relation to this, Hua Cheng says that Xie Lian should, you know, not do it. Now, what I mean by trope is that in a lot of BL, there are times where a character in the couple like interacts with another male character, or maybe by accident ends up in a situation where they're kind of like in a compromising position with that other male character, and character B is in this compromising position by accident, and character A gets kind of jealous and is like, hey, don't be around other guys or be in this situation because you're making me jealous. It makes me think you don't love me. One of those situations. And it's a romantic trope. It's kind of, it's very cliche. But what I like that MXTX does is you can kind of take what Hua Cheng tells him in two different ways. You can say that one, Hua Cheng's like, please don't do CPR on like that on a real person. They will die because you didn't do it correctly. But also he's saying, don't be going and kissing other guys because I don't like that. So, but the way that he says it is he's like, don't do this casually to anyone else in the future. Otherwise, again, Hua Cheng is not somebody that tells Xie Lian what he can and cannot do. He gives him his opinions and tells him what he thinks. He's like, hey, maybe you shouldn't do this to anybody. Otherwise, something might happen. But he doesn't outright tell Xie Lian, if you do this, I'm going to hate you, or I forbid you from doing this. He just kind of says, maybe learn CPR before you do this anymore. But there is kind of that underlying, also maybe don't kiss random guys thinking you're to say them. So I fully believe Hua Cheng can be a jealous character. Very much so. But one thing that elevates him is that he doesn't order Xie Lian around or tell him what to do, or he's not controlling of Xie Lian. He just says his opinion and his thoughts, but leaves everything up to Xie Lian's own decisions. And I love that. I love that MXTX takes a trope that's kind of cliche and maybe problematic at sometimes and makes it her own and fixes it. I like it. I'm like, yes, awesome, cool. And so Xie Lian was just like ashamed at this point, one, because he was doing CPR wrong, and two, because he was kissing Hua Cheng in the process. It's like, oh yeah, not gonna do it. So we established that on the island there are no people, there are just monsters and possibly the Blackwater. And so Hua Cheng says he's never been here before, but he knows of the island. So Hua Cheng establishes that Hua Cheng, he basically stays away. He stays away from the Blackwater domain because, as he says, he wants to save face. What's hilarious is he wants to go find Qi-Rong because he knows Qi-Rong's a little shit and he can beat him up. But Hua Cheng seems to be a little bit wary of the Blackwater because we've established Hua Cheng is not necessarily strong in this place. Like, he is strong naturally, but against the Blackwater, he's on the Blackwater's home turf. He's like, I'm not strong here, and the Blackwater could actually do some damage to me, so maybe we should avoid them. Maybe we should just avoid him. And he's like, plus, I've got to see him in the future, so I don't want to, like, piss him off now. He's going to be my enemy later. I don't want that. What's very curious about it is we don't know Hua Cheng's impression of Bai Wusheng. I'm assuming it's not good because of everything that happened in Volume 3. But I'm so curious now if we have, Crimson rules the land and Black rules the water. What does Bai Wusheng rule? What does Qi-Rong rule? I mean, Qi-Rong's just kind of the fourth one out of pure spite. But where does that leave Bai Wusheng? Which is rather curious. Rather curious indeed. I just missed Bai Wusheng. That's my main. Wanted to bring him up because I can. And so they decide to build this coffin. Oh my god, they decide to build this coffin. The coffin boat. Oh my god. I'm with Pei Ming. Pei Ming's like, you didn't build a bigger boat? That gets me so hard. As Pei Ming's like, yeah, you two aren't together. You're not trying anything. You're not doing things intentionally. Except you had the opportunity to do things that wouldn't make it awkward, and you both didn't do it. Why not? Why not a bigger boat? Oh my god. I freaking love Pei Ming in these chapters. Because he's just like, I feel like Pei Ming, I feel like Xie Lian is like, no, we're not together. We don't like each other, whatever. And Pei Ming's that person on Twitter that's like taken screenshots and made like a tweet that explains the entire theory of how they're together. Like Pei Ming's gotten on forums and did like, okay, here's why the Crimson Rainsalt Flower and the Prince of Shanla are together, okay? Here's my proof. And he's got like screenshots and explanations. He's like Charlie Day and has the conspiracy board. Like Pei Ming is bound and determined to prove they are in love. And I'm like, I don't know why you're doing this, Pei Ming. why you're obsessed with it, but if Pei Ming ends up being the catalyst to get Xie Lian to realize that he's into Hua Cheng and admitting it, then my view of him will do a complete 180. If Pei Ming is the savior of the ship of Hua Lian in this, I will like get an entire bottle of wine out and just cheer Pei Ming over the course of several episodes, because I can't drink a full bottle of wine in one reaction. I will die. So, but yeah, if that ends up being the case, I swear, if Pei Ming ends up being the catalyst for Hua Cheng and Xie Lian getting together in like volumes 6 or 7, I will spend all of volume 7 and 8 just drinking wine chan for every reaction. I will do it to celebrate our our womanizing heavenly official. I'm calling it now, but we'll see if that happens. But God, I love that. So yeah, they build the coffin, right? And I love that Xie Lian has realized that he is, you know, drained of spiritual energy. He needs to heal himself. He needs to eat food. But he's like, I just had that half-steamed bun, but there's not really anything to eat here. I found some fruits, and apparently Hua Cheng finds a rabbit. He tries to fish. I find it interesting that there's no fish in the black water. It's kind of cool. There's nothing to fish there. I kind of like that the black water is like taking all the fish for himself. It's kind of neat. But they build this coffin boat that they have to get in together, and they're both damp and sweaty from the coffin boat. And I like that Xie Lian is like, we were both damp and sweaty, but neither of us wanted to like strip, because we've already had to do that with the Windmaster before and it was awkward, so nobody wanted to do it again. But Xie Lian, when he returns back from getting the fruit, Hua Cheng has already gotten him all the things. He's already like cooked the hair, done the things. Hua Cheng he won the husbando poll. He is a husbando of all husbandos. Literally, Hua Cheng is like ultimate husbando material, right? And so this whole conversation at the fire, I want to see it animated so badly that I'm like, China, here's my money. Like, what else do you want from me, right? And so oh my God, it's such a good scene. Because Xie Lian is just eating Hua Cheng's cooking up, like you do. Poor Xie Lian cannot cook to this extent, so anything. And also, I like that Hua Cheng took the initiative to cook, because he knows how Xie Lian cooks. So he's just like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and make food. Xie Lian, that's fine. I've already got it taken care of. It's cool. Don't worry about it. He just didn't want him to cook, right? And then Xie Lian, he brings it up. Let us all say, Xie Lian is the one that keeps bringing up. Xie Lian is jealous of himself and doesn't realize it's himself. But Xie Lian, he is jealous of the one that Hua Cheng loves. But he does not know it's him. It's so frustrating, because Hua Cheng knows what he's talking about. Hua Cheng's the one that brought it up. He's like, oh, it's fine. I've already found someone. I just haven't won him over yet. Hua Cheng knows what he's doing, right? But God, the patience Hua Cheng has, because Xie Lian keeps bringing it up. And Hua Cheng keeps being courteous and doesn't say, I love you, Gege. He keeps just skirting around it because he wants Xie Lian to figure it out himself. And I'm like, oh my God, Xie Lian. I want to shake our deity and be like, it's you! It's been you this whole time! Because he says, oh, well, I've never met anyone better than you. That noble, gracious, special someone really lucked out. I'm like, oh my God, you're that noble, gracious, special someone. And Xie Lian's just like, that I can meet that person. It's me who lucked out. He knows what he's doing. But God, the patience in him. And Xie Lian is just like, keeps eating and he keeps eating, and he gets jealous and he keeps eating to the point where he's got grease all over him. And Hua Cheng's like, man, you're really starving. Like, here, just take mine. I'm a ghost. I don't need the food. And Xie Lian is the one that asks, what kind of person is that special someone? How come you haven't won them over yet? And Hua Cheng is just like, And Xie Lian, it's like the brain hasn't connected to the heart and body, because in his mind, he's like, how could Hua Cheng not have won this person over? Like, he's so wonderful. Like, does this person not have good taste? Maybe they're taking it all for granted. I'm like, or maybe they're oblivious. Like you, Xie Lian. Oh my God. But Hua Cheng admitting he's afraid is just, he's like, why are you afraid? You're a supreme ghost. And Hua Cheng says, what shitty ghost king? If I was awesome, I wouldn't have been so powerless when people hung me up and beat me hundreds of years ago. So there's something there, right? That Hua Cheng, so he says, so apparently people beat him after hanging him up. Hundreds, I'm going to put like hundreds with an S, of years ago. So we don't know exactly when Hua Cheng died. We don't know the circumstance, but it was hundreds of years ago, and people strung him up and beat him to death, apparently. Like, why? What was... I'm assuming, my assumption is he was defending Xie Lian, and it could have been happening during the backlash when people were, like, against Xie Lian, and Hua Cheng defended him, and they, like, basically maybe lynched him because of it. That's what I'm thinking it was. They hung him up and beat him to death because he was defending Xie Lian. But he did it because he loved Xie Lian. That's my thought behind it, but I don't know if that's the case. We don't know. And he's like... he laments being powerless, that he couldn't have lived to carry on. So there's that, and he is afraid of Xie Lian finding out. He's afraid of Xie Lian finding out. And the fact that he is confessing this to the person he loves is like testing the water. He's like, okay, well, my Gege is kind of oblivious. And does not realize I'm talking about him. So I'm going to test the waters. I'm going to ask him, I'm going to admit this to him. And because he doesn't realize I'm talking about him, he's not going to know. And maybe that will get him to be, honest in this moment with his answer. And so Xie Lian's like, well, you can't say that. Everyone has to go through it to grow up. And then he's like, And Xie Lian realizes something in that moment that I think is really good that he realizes it. He realizes just how good his first ascension technically was. Not what happened afterwards, because the stuff that happened during his ascension was pretty bad. But, Hua Cheng, for all we know, was beaten to death and then became a ghost after that, and it was this big horrible thing. It was very painful. And Xie Lian's like, I ascended while I was asleep. I got all this godly power while I was sleeping, so I actually didn't suffer at all to become the god that I am. You suffered a lot to become the ghost that you are, so it's very opposite, right? But then Hua Cheng says that person saw me at my worst. So Xie Lian apparently was there when Hua Cheng died. He was there when he was at his worst. So we don't know when that was or what that was, but he was there. What the heck? So that's a mystery. That's something we don't know yet. We've got to find that out in the story. That's going to come back at some point. And Xie Lian says he's envious. He's like, that person saw you at your worst. If they, still love you. He says there was a period of my time in my life that wasn't easy, which is volume 3. He'd think if someone would witness this version of me who rolled in the dirt and couldn't get up and still love me for who I was, it would be great. I don't know if there's anyone like that, but I would never show my past to anyone either. So, which the irony is that Hua Cheng has seen you at your worst, and he does love you, and it's like, so, Xie Lian. And Xie Lian's saying, if somebody's seen you at your worst and still loves you, then that must mean they're a perfect person. Which is exactly what's happened. Xie Lian has seen him at his worst and still loves him. And Hua Cheng has seen Xie Lian at his worst and still loves him. And so, but neither of them want to admit to each other that it's them. And I'm like, you boys just need to talk. You just need to, but Hua Cheng is afraid that when Xie Lian finds out that he was he at that time, that he's going to leave him. Now, Xie Lian says in this chapter that's not going to be the case. And so the question is Hua Cheng going to do something with that later on? We don't know, right? So, oh my God. It's ridiculous, right? And to me, the one basking in infinite glory is you. The one fallen from grace is also you. What matters is you, not the state of you. And Xie Lian gives this beautiful speech about how he's like, I admire you so much and I'm envious that someone has already met that kind of you. It's an affinity that comes by chance and couldn't be begged for. Whether that bond should continue, it's 3 parts fate and 7 parts courage. Like, and Hua Cheng's like, okay, Xie Lian's on board for someone like that. He says those things. So now Hua Cheng's thinking, is Xie Lian going to be on board with me once he knows that it is me? I think that's the one thing. Hua Cheng is thinking, okay, that sounds great that you're saying this, Xie Lian, but you haven't figured out it's me yet. So are you going to change your tune when you figure out it's me? And I feel like that's him saying, like, I'm not a girl. When you find out it's a guy you're interested in, is that going to change? Are you going to be like, are you going to accept me and accept your feelings for me? What are we going to do with that? And so I feel like that's what Hua Cheng is afraid of, is that once Xie Lian figures out it's Hua Cheng, then he'll be like, oh no. And there's some things that Xie Lian does in these chapters that kind of lead me to believe that Hua Cheng's still hesitant, being like, Like, Xie Lian is not comfortable coming out, and he's not comfortable saying that he feels that way about Hua Cheng, and Hua Cheng knows it, so he's still holding back. And God, the patience that man has, whoo, especially after this bonfire conversation, I was like, oh my God, are you joking? So, and Hua Cheng says that there's other reasons as well. There's other reasons. He says there's many other reasons, which of course, we don't know. He doesn't get to talk about it. They change the subject and they just continue to labor on the coffin. So there are other reasons, basically meaning that this conversation is to be continued. I was like, but what I like about it is that these two are talking with one another. They're sharing their deepest, darkest secrets with one another and developing this bond even more. And what I like is that MXTX is giving us just a little bit. We get like a little drop along the way, but it's going to all add up at some point. And I'm waiting for it to, right? I'm waiting for that moment. It just hasn't happened yet. And I'm like, So yeah. So they build the coffin. And things were going to be fine until they end up pushing the coffin in the sea. And just so happens the heavenly calamity is showing up right at the time they finish the coffin, right? And I like the Xie Lian's like, I'm sorry. Like, Xie Lian feels bad, again, that he's making what he feels, he's making Hua Cheng be in an uncomfortable situation. And Hua Cheng's like, I'm not uncomfortable at all. And so, God, the moment that Xie Lian was like, you on top and me on bottom, and Hua Cheng being like, is the top and the bottom the same? So is Hua Cheng a switch? Is Hua Cheng like, I can be your angel, I can be your devil sort of thing? That makes sense for Hua Cheng's character, where he's like, I can be both. I can be whatever you want me to be, gay. And Xie Lian's like, well, I prefer to be on bottom. And it's like, okay. And then, God, MXTX uses so much sexual language in these chapters where she's like, oh, don't turn big, Hua Cheng. Like, MXTX, you've got to stop. You've got to stop. And then something's got its eye on the coffin. And that's when we get to chapter 121, which is talking about like the water dragon has appeared, has the coffin in its mouth, and is shaking it around, trying to, get rid of it. And so, yeah, God, the chapter, they just flip-flop all around in the coffin, and they just jostle around, and they're just like in every possible position, right? And the way that MXTX, I'm like, oh my God, MXTX, the way that she writes this, that Hua Cheng says, don't worry, even if it breaks, I'm here, you won't sink. But he's like whispering it into Xie Lian's hair, like as he's holding him close and they're embracing each other. Oh my God. I can't, y'all. I can't. They're just holding onto the edge of the coffin. And so they dip and dive, and they're just like, it says they were thoroughly rubbing against one another, banging heavily in all sorts of different parts of each other. Like, yeah, it's basically the coffin flip-flopping around. It's almost like they're having sex, but they're not, right? But they're, smashing up against each other, and things are getting crazy. And Xie Lian is very aware that Hua Cheng is this handsome man, solid from top to bottom, and it has a reaction. It causes a reaction that he has an erection while he's next to Hua Cheng. So Xie Lian has a moment. And the problem is that Xie Lian is embarrassed for Hua Cheng, because he's like, oh my God, I don't want Hua Cheng to notice that I'm having an erection right now, so I need to do something about that. And he's like, well, the problem is too, this isn't just like a one-time occurrence. He's like, he goes to close his knees, but when he closed his knees, he touched something he should have, because Hua Cheng's like, He's like, he touched Hua Cheng. So Hua Cheng is also in a similar state. Both of them together like this. And Xie Lian's like, oh my God. He's like, he was scared that Hua Cheng would notice his body's reaction. And I love that he says, in which case he might as well just smash his head against the coffin and die. I love Xie Lian's so afraid. He's so afraid of Hua Cheng realizing he's turned on by him. And it's like, Xie Lian, if only you knew. If only you could figure it out. That Hua Cheng's all about this. That he says the awkward thing was there was already an incident on the island. They've already kind of had this happen. And he's like, if this keeps happening and I keep, showing signs that I'm attracted to you, I'm eventually not going to be able to hide it anymore, and we're going to have to talk about it. And that's the last thing Xie Lian wants to do. And so the problem is, Xie Lian blurts out for him not to touch him. And that's the miscommunication. Because Xie Lian it's not that he doesn't want to touch Hua Cheng. I don't think that's it at all. But Hua Cheng's taking it as, okay, Xie Lian's not ready. He's like, we'll just get out of here. And I'm just like, no. Xie Lian, Hua Cheng is thinking that Xie Lian is just not ready yet. He's like, I'll just be patient and wait. And I'm like, you are a saint, Hua Cheng. You may be a supreme ghost, but you are a freaking saint for waiting on Xie Lian to be okay with it all. So they burst out of the coffin, but they're like faces flushed, like hair mussed up, like clothes hanging off of themselves. They look like they've had sex, and they get out of this water dragon, right? And they land on the Blackwater Island, and there are two figures, the Water Master and General Pei. And so Shi Wudu has his spiritual seal out, beckoning the winds and the rains, like as if he was going to summon that water dragon. And Pei Ming is like, take it easy. This round's over. Who knows when the next round will start to save your energy. I'm still suspicious of Shi Wudu and the Blackwater. I'm still suspicious because that whole thing there, like when they show up, when like Pei Ming is with Shi Wudu, and they don't know where the Wind Master or the Earth Master are, right? But here's my thing. I don't know. Something about it, like Shi Wudu, it looked like he was summoning the water dragon. Right? It looks like he was, even though he's supposed to be fighting him instead. And then here's the thing. So Pei Ming, they get to the island, and of course Pei Ming is just like, what is this? What are you doing? What's going on? He's just all about, Pei Ming wants to reveal Xie Lian with Hua Cheng as a couple. He's all about it. And I'm sure that Pei Ming's just like, Jun Wu and all them, they favor you, Xie Lian, because you're just the darling of the heavenly realm, even though you've had all this misfortune and other stuff happen to you. So if I out you as being the supreme ghost, like, lover or whatever, then what's the heavenly realm going to think of you? What will they think of their decision against Pei Jr.? Who knows, right? But I love Xie Lian tries to like save face and say, oh, the coffin was just a little too small, that's all. And Shi Wudu is like, I'm not talking about that. And Pei Ming's like, yeah, why didn't you make a bigger one? And I love that Xie Lian's just like, how'd you guys get here? Like, we're just going to change the subject, right? We're not going to talk about this anymore. And so Pei Ming says that they just made it to the island. They didn't expect to see a coffin adrift on the surface. What a curious sight. Yeah, which is kind of suspicious because the heavenly trial doesn't start until miraculously Shi Wudu and them arrive on the island and see Xie Lian, which seems kind of weird, right? And then Pei Ming, who they've suspected is Hua Cheng, I feel like Pei Ming has suspected that it's been Hua Cheng from the start. He just hasn't had any proof or reason to doubt. And so now he's like, well, wait, you have to be deceased in a boat, so what could it be? Crimson Rain Sought Flower? Like, he reveals it like it's some big dramatic reveal, and Xie Lian's like, yep, it's been like that. Like, I love it. And Hua Cheng just laughs. He's like, come on. He's like, what are you gonna do? He's like, are we gonna have a dick swinging contest? Let's go. And Xie Lian's like, no! He's like, Hua Cheng, stay away from Pei Ming. He might have a disease. Don't want you to get it because we might do it later, and I don't want that either. So he's like, we need to avoid that, actually. So he says, this is someone else's territory. Do you think I want to be here? Yeah, I like that Pei Ming tries to, like, pin all of this on Hua Cheng because that's been, like, his MO this whole series. And Hua Cheng's like, I can't do anything here. This is the Blackwater's territory. Like, I have no power here. No. And then Xie Lian's like, before a fight starts, like, where's the Windmaster? I thought you were going to look for them, Pei Ming. And then this is the suspicious part. Pei Ming says they were fished up at first, but a giant wave from the Watermaster came and flushed them away. And the Watermaster says, oh, don't mislead. I can't raise waves. The creatures in the sea kept coming one after the other. You couldn't find them in the first place. Like, he starts to argue, but here's the thing. This is the weird part, right? We saw in the last set of chapters, let me find the right marker for this. We saw the Watermaster up on the dragon, but he can't summon waves, supposedly, because it almost looked like he was. So that's suspicious. Do I think that the Watermaster is also the Blackwater, and this is just like going to be some crazy big reveal that they're the same person? I mean, I'm like 80% sure that it's not the case. I'm 80% sure the Watermaster and the Blackwater are two different people. I'm like 10% sure that maybe the Watermaster and the Blackwater are the same person, because this is kind of suspicious. And then there's 10% of me thinks that it's Long Ying now. Back from volume 3. My theory that Long Ying has been the Blackwater is like sunk down to 10. It's sunk down to 10%. It's like, it's pretty low at this point. I could be relatively surprised though. We'll see. But yeah, it's weird. And so it just feels weird. Like, all the coincidences adding up. And there's one more thing that we'll talk about here in a minute. But Xie Lian says, well, it shouldn't be any problem because the Windmaster is with the Earthmaster. And Shi Wudu is like, what's the Earthmaster going to do? They're mediocre and average. They're not a martial god. Like, their powers aren't even as strong as the Windmaster's. And then he remembers the Windmaster doesn't have any power. So that's not the part I'm talking about, but that is also suspicious as well, because it almost makes me think that maybe if Shi Wudu is the Blackwater, they've already imprisoned Ming Yi as well as the Windmaster and knows it and is kind of like making fun of Xie Lian. But why? Weird. I don't know. There's just some coincidences here that make me suspicious, right? And so, because Xie Lian kind of defends Ming Yi, being like, yeah, they're not a martial god and they're not the strongest, but they're not the worst. They're like, they're pretty decent. They got some tricks up their sleeves that could help. They were able to do fine at Banyu. Yeah, they're fine. And Pei Ming's like, look, as long as they don't run into the Blackwater, they should be fine. And it's like, ha ha ha, famous last words, Pei Ming. Thanks for jinxing us again, sir. And then that's when Hua Cheng says, the heavenly calamity's pursuing you everywhere and fighting you. You've made a huge mess of his lair. You don't think that he's noticed? Or not? I guess my one thing that keeps me from thinking that the Watermaster is the Blackwater is the fact that Hua Cheng hasn't said anything about it, or hasn't hinted at it, or been looking suspiciously at the Watermaster, right? Like Hua Cheng doesn't like the Watermaster because they're the water tyrant, but he's not said anything to like make us, the audience, suspect that they're the same person. So that's kind of my major reason I don't think they're the same. It's just awfully convenient and suspicious that Shi Wudu does some things that kind of line up with the with the Blackwater that's interesting, right? Like, he suddenly takes out the locket now. He's like, oh no, the Windmaster's hurt. And it's like, okay, well, we can't see them. Where do we go? And we get a little bit of some Modao Zushi-esque things happening. We get talking about the golden cores. The golden cores of the two brothers. I instantly was like, oh man. I was like, Wei Wuxun Zhang Cheng from Modao Zushi. Getting that golden core talk back. Like it. So, I like that they establish that the golden cores are not something a spell can affect because they're part of their body. Like, it's not as simple as that, right? I appreciate that quite a bit. And so it looks like he like throws the locket around. That's kind of weird too, that he throws the locket around and he's like, oh, well, he's on the island right now. It all just seems like a big matter of coincidence and convenience, unless the black water is luring them intentionally, right? So then they go into the forest, and again, kind of suspicious. The Watermaster, nothing bad happens to the Watermaster. It's literally just Pei Ming getting attacked by the little monsters. And Pei Ming gets frustrated and blames it on Hua Cheng, and Hua Cheng's like, I can't control these things. Why are you blaming me? That seems suspicious, doesn't it? Doesn't it seem suspicious that nothing happens to the Watermaster? That they're instantly able to go to the center of the forest, where the lake is, where the castle is, where all the danger is? Doesn't that seem just like a matter of coincidence? I don't know. It seems like it's too convenient, right? But Pei Ming is convinced that Hua Cheng has it out for him. And I'm sure Hua Cheng wouldn't mind if Pei Ming got knocked down a peg or two, since he's being like he is. But I like that Hua Cheng's like, look, I don't have a gun in this fight. I'm just helping out my buddy here, right? I wanted to see more description of the little minions. They don't really give us any description of the little minions, except they can curl up into a little ball. I just imagine these little like hedgehog creatures that can curl up. I don't know. I wanted to see what they look like, but maybe there's some fan art out there to show us what they are like. And so Pei Ming is just bound and determined to blame everything on Hua Cheng. And Xie Lian's like, whoa, let's think about this. Hua Cheng does not play meaningless pranks. Like, if he does anything, it has a reason behind it. And so they get to this lake. I love how it's described as like the center of the lake is like glass. Like there's no ripples in the water. And it takes them a second for Xie Lian to realize the reflection of the water reflects everything else around them. There's like an invisibility spell. It's like a castle and a kingdom on this part of the island that the invisibility spell hides, but you can see it through the water. That's a really cool effect. I love that. And so then the little description of the ghost Pei Ming had captured that had skull gone and black blood spurting meters high. What the fudge? And then there's this shadowy monster that has appeared behind Hua Cheng and Xie Lian. What the hell? And then at the edge of the lakeshore, the area is flat and empty, nothing to be seen, but the lakeshore reflected a gloomy black, charcoal black building. It was like a prison. And there's a row of bars with a pale white hand begging for help, which is probably the Windmaster. So yeah, but then Shi Wudu not realizing that it was there. I'm like, suspicious. Because whenever Xie Lian starts to say that he found it, that's when the shadow appears. So I'm like, I don't know. Again, I feel like Hua Cheng would have called it out if he knew that Shi Wudu was the Blackwater, but maybe Shi Wudu's able to hide it, and so Hua Cheng didn't know. And Hua Cheng's never said he's never been to the island before, so he doesn't know how the mechanics work. But it's just weird that Xie Wudu has been involved in these circumstances the last several chapters that just conveniently work out to a certain degree. And it's suspicious. Now, MXTX is known for making you feel suspicious about characters, and then it's a red herring, and then you get like a whole new character that's the actual problem. So I'm probably wrong. Xie Wudu is probably totally innocent. It's probably totally fine. I'm just overreacting, but it just is very weird, right? The coincidences here are kind of odd. But I do love that Pei Ming is the one targeted by the ghosts. It's kind of funny. I kind of enjoy it a lot, but I can't believe the chapters ended there. How dare it? So yeah, Xie Lian, this miscommunication between Xie Lian and Hua Cheng, it's not even miscommunication really on Hua Cheng's part. Hua Cheng knows that based on the conversation they've had now, he's like, okay, Xie Lian does love me, but he hasn't figured out it yet. So he just has the horribly arduous task now of not saying anything. Bless you, sir. Bless you. Bless you, sir, because that is such a hard row to hoe. What the fudge? I can't. Cannot, y'all. So yeah, we did get a picture this chapter. We got a picture at the very beginning of the chapter. Let me tell you, it's a really good one. I'm very excited by it. I was really hoping we'd get a kiss picture, but you know what? We got one that's just as good. I'll take it. and it is of Xie Lian on the shore looking lovingly at Hua Cheng. Look at that. Look at that jazz. That's beautiful. I could stare at that a while. Hua Cheng, I love Hua Cheng has his hair down and he's in the mode. So as far as we know, Hua Cheng still looks like San Long at this moment. He turned back into his original form inside the coffin, right, with the deeper voice and everything that Xie Lian's like with. But then maybe Hua Cheng's like, well, let's just turn back into our regular form for now. So, oh my God, I'm glad I'm not waiting for this next chapter set, but I know what's gonna happen. I already know. I'm gonna read a couple chapters. I'm gonna read chapters 122 and 123 for next week. And I'm going to be at the same damn place I am now with a tease and a cliffhanger because that's volume 4. But what can we do? But what can we do? So I'm so excited for the chapters to come. We're halfway through volume 4 already. It's amazing. I'm excited, but we've reached the layer of the Blackwater. I feel like we're about to meet the Blackwater. Is it going to be Shiwudu? Is it going to be a new character? Is it going to be Long Ying? What's it going to be? I'm so excited. I'm ready. Pei Ming has grown like a fungus on me. Now, here's my thing. I have several expectations that I want from these characters. I want Xie Lian's brain to put 2 and 2 together, figure out it's Hua Cheng, and figure out that they like them. Is that going to happen this volume? No. I already know it's not going to happen. It's probably going to be volume 6, 7, or 8 before it happens. And I just have to deal with that. So I'm going to be patient and kind and try not to be too frustrated. But I want Xie Lian to put 2 and 2 together and realize all of that. Hua Cheng is doing great. He's doing great, sweetie. He's realized, what I would like Hua Cheng to realize is that Xie Lian is afraid of making him uncomfortable, because I think that's where we're at. And I don't want Hua Cheng to think that Xie Lian doesn't like him like that, but everything else Hua Cheng's doing, you're doing great, sweetie. Just keep doing your thing. I want Pei Ming to be the catalyst. I want him to be the catalyst that makes these two goofballs realize they're in love. I want it to be Pei Ming. And the funny thing is, I think that Pei Ming is trying to call them out together as a way to stop them, but it's only going to bring them together and make them stronger, and it's going to backfire on him, and I want it to happen so badly. So yes, I need this to happen. And then Shiwudu, his character's such a mystery at this point. He seems to care about his brother an awful lot, and I love that about his character, but now I'm like, okay, we found out supposedly where the Windmaster is. I'm assuming Mingyi is with him, probably captured as well. What are you going to do? The one thing I also don't like is that Shiwudu very much has that older brother, oh, they're not good enough for you vibe, where Mingyi would lay down life and limb for the Windmaster, and probably has at this point. And Shiwudu is they're not good enough for you. And I'm like, well, you just let your younger brother, he's an adult, let him make a decision, right? It's one of those things. I would feel, on my younger brother's behalf, if my younger brother was dating someone that I was like, oh, they're not good for you, I would definitely feel the same way Shiwudu would do. But once they're an adult, you kind of gotta let them figure stuff out for themselves, right? Right? And so I think it's one thing for Shiwudu to say that to the Windmaster's face, but then it's another thing for him to talk bad about Mingyi behind his back. I'm like, oh, give Mingyi a little more credit, right? Xie Lian definitely does. So I don't know what to think about Shiwudu. I feel like the next chapter is going to determine a lot of things, right? But I don't know. Y'all. Oh my gosh. I'm glad I don't have to wait. I'm sorry that you all do. But I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below. I want to give a quick shout out before we leave to our philanthropy tier over on Patreon. Thank you all so much for being so supportive. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. If you're not familiar with the philanthropy tier, over on Patreon, I have 3 tiers. One is just $1, and it gets you access to the Discord and to polls for future shows and series that I watch. The second is the $5 tier for a month that gives you access to stuff a week early. So if you want to see the next video, you can go ahead and see it now, as well as giving you access to the Discord and the polls as well. And the final tier is the philanthropy tier, which gives you all of that, a shout out in these videos, as well as if we have a tie, being exclusively the tiebreakers for that series. So I'm really excited, y'all, and I'm very, very grateful for all of your support to help me keep doing what I do and to help me buy these volumes so that I can support MXTX officially in an official capacity and talk about them in the illustrations as well. You all help with that, and I'm greatly appreciative. So a special thanks to these individuals, to Dana, to Edgar, to Truck, to Anime Annie, to Kenny, to Arjo, to Shimoyama, as well as Nameless Monster, Tyrone, Be Happy, and Translucent Men. Thank you all so, so much. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. All of my love. And all my love to you guys too. So thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed this reaction discussion. I'm so giddy. I'll probably wait till tomorrow to read the next set chapters because I've got other things I need to work on, but I'm excited. So I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yes, I will be back very, very soon with chapters 122 and 123 of Heaven Official's Blessing.